Today we're talking about ENTJ careers. Some people think these two things are synonymous. The ENTJs are all about careers,
Right.
but they have other interests as well. That we're going to talk about careers though on today's show. This subject came about during our personality life path mentorship program. This career idea for a podcast series because we've been doing this mentorship where we take the 8 Jungian cognitive functions. These are the mental processes we use as people in our personality types to learn information, make decisions. We take all 8 of those, and we have a group of people going through a mentorship class with us, looking at each one of those functions each week. We look at the archetypical energy that function represents in the world, but also how our relationship, according to our personality type, interfaces with that energy and that function and the people around us. And as we go through the mentorship, people understand how they're attuned, the you are here dot of their life. You know, you're an ENTJ, that's the you are here dot, but where are you going in life? What's your career path? What's your relationship path? What's the path you're going to follow now that you know you're an ENTJ? So that's the mentorship. And in the middle of it, we were noticing people are showing up in transition in their life. They're coming to this program because they're transitioning maybe a lifestyle. They might be in a relationship transition, but I'll tell you 80% or more of people are in the middle of a career transition of some sort, whether they're just starting out in a new career or they're wanting to alter or change a career trajectory they've been on. So this was coming up so much in that mentorship, we thought, let's do a series on the Personality Hacker podcast talking about careers related to each of the 16 types. And this week, we're talking about your type, ENTJ, or maybe you have an ENTJ in your life and you're listening along to get to know them a little better. And we're going to talk about it in a principle-based approach today, Antonia, where we're going to go into 4 different flavorings of the ENTJ personality type.
Right. Yeah, we're going to discuss 4 subtypes of how ENTJs can show up. And the reason why we're going that direction is it seems that there is a strong relationship between career choice and the style of our personality type that we show up with. And that makes sense because our career, our job is, ostensibly where we spend at least 40 hours a week. There are certain, very specific problems that need to be solved in that career. There are different environmental considerations depending upon the industry you're in. There are different styles of people you run into. And so the problems you have to solve, the way you have to show up to interface with the other people, the environments you find yourself in, it makes sense that all of this would influence how your brain is being, sort of more subtly wired over years, sometimes decades of life. So the career you choose actually has an impact on your subtype. And your subtype has an influence on the kind of career you're going to be choosing because not every ENTJ is the same. I mean, that seems obvious, but if you were to say, look up, a list of ENTJ careers, it's probably pretty monolithic. And you can't really, paint all ENTJs with the same broad brush. So I think entering into it with a little bit more, so maybe subtlety or nuance, I think is helpful when a person is trying to pick a career path.
I did do a list of ENTJ careers, Antonia, a top 10 list.
Yes, I know.
I did internet research. I have it right here. I can read it on the air if you'd like me to.
Why don't you, Joel?
Okay.
Why don't you read your list?
So this is the top 10 ENTJ careers according to the internet. Number 1, CEO. Surprise, surprise, according to the internet. Number 2, management consultant. 3, entrepreneur. 4, investment banker. 5, marketing manager. 6, military officer. 7, sales manager. 8, financial manager. 9, project manager. The word manager is in here a lot so far. And number 10, judge. So like a judicial career of making judgments based on people's differences or not getting along. That's interesting. This whole list, I think, is pretty stereotypical, though. I think the CEO in the top spot, I don't think surprises many people who've done any small amount of research online around different career options for ENTJs. But then there's not a lot of creative things on here. There's no actor or artist. We know a lot of ENTJs that have careers wildly different than this list.
Yeah, I would say that that's not a bad list. Every one of these episodes in this series that we're doing around type and careers, the list is usually pretty decent because, it's an aggregate of all the people who identify as being ENTJs. And quite honestly, I think sometimes just when somebody is in a managerial or C-level position, I think that they have a tendency to type out as having ENTJ preferences.
Fair enough.
Even if they don't. So I think there is a lot of conflation of those two things. But it's not a bad list. There are certain ENTJ subtypes that very much are attracted to things that are, like leadership positions and managerial positions. But it is unnecessarily limiting. There are different styles of ENTJs that won't find what they're looking for on that list.
So we're going to talk about 4 different subtypes of the ENTJ personality type today. This came from Dr. Dario Nardi doing brain scan research. He had ENTJs come into his laboratory, connect to a brain scan EEG machine. And then he would watch the patterns, the neuropatterns, or they're called neuropatterns, I guess. I don't know what they're called. I'm bearing out my own ignorance here. He'd watch the patterns of the brain show up on the scans, and he would see them cluster into 4 different subtypes. And based on these clusters, he started to notice that career choices were similar among the subtypes. And then he also wove in some of Dr. Helen Fisher's work around neurotransmitters and noticed also that there's some, deference or attraction towards certain neurotransmitters as well. Mm-hmm. So he asked Dr. Victor Galenko, socionics guy from Europe, if he could use his subtype nicknames to talk about these. And so if they sound familiar, they came from Victor. With permission, Dario used them for these to describe the different subtypes for all the types, not just the ENTJ. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about these. Let's jump into these 4. They're called dominant, creative, normalizing, and harmonizing subtypes. They each have character qualities, and we're gonna make this very approachable to people who may be new to type, but also go a layer deeper. Just a quick comment or two at each one of these for people that are into cognitive functions and some deeper elements of type as well.
Right. We want to make this accessible if you're brand new to type, and you very well may be, because looking for career options and diving more into careers is one of their, like when you first get into type, it's one of the most obvious applications.
Yeah.
So you might be very new to type and really just trying to wrap your head around all of this. And we want to be accessible to people at all levels. But there are a lot of people who are type geeks out there. So we'll give a word of warning when we're going to throw a bone to the type geeks around how this all works.